Hey, how's it going, everybody? So, today I am going to be starting my dieting series. It's roughly 34 weeks out from my first show in 7 years. And what I wanted to try to do with this series is basically just document what I'm doing. To kind of give an overview, I currently handle my nutrition and farm side of things as regards to anabolics and other adjustments there. And then I do have a training coach who is Jared Feather at Renaissance Periodization. We've been collaborating for over a year on my programming. And essentially, I just wanted to give some insight into what I have been doing to be successful thus far, at least in this point, mass gaining. So essentially, this series will cover my end of my mass gain for the end of the year, and then what I'm doing leading into prep. Now, as far as the frequency, I don't want to make promises that I would be able to do this every week. My goal would be at this point at least every 2 weeks. I would do it more frequently if I end up having time to do it. I believe that this will be useful for some people. I know that when I started, if I had this insight, especially on the decision-making process and whatnot, it would have been super helpful to me. And I understand that if I was a coach, it would have been super helpful to me to see how someone makes adjustments and goes over different objective and subjective variables and makes adjustments based off of those. So essentially, I'm just going to be documenting what I do every week. I do a check-in with myself. I do this with my clients as well, and talk through how I make some of these adjustments. So getting into today, essentially, this is 34 weeks out. Giving you some background, I mean, I've completed over a year with Jared handling my training coaching, and from there I've adopted their Renaissance periodizations, some of their kind of macro cycle plan, and it's based on a lot of principles that they have found to be very useful based on their practical experience, and then a lot of the data as well. Is there something on me? Jesus. All right. So what have we done? I mean, I can actually pull up my macro cycle plan here. Let me make me smaller. Okay. So first I'm going to show you what my macro cycle plan is. Whoops. Let me likely not going to edit these videos just because it takes so much time. Maybe I'll cut a couple things out, but it's going to be raw. Okay, well, actually, perfect. You can see this here. This is starting at 10/19, so almost a year ago. This is going to be, if it'll load ever, basically what my macro cycle plan has looked like. So right here, this was a Minicut, my last Minicut, which is almost a year ago exactly. And then massing, I believe I got sick right here. That's kind of why my weight stayed stagnant. This is my weight trend over time. Sorry if I didn't clarify. And then the end of my mass, which was towards the end of the year. Then this is a maintenance period before dieting. And this is a diet, which was very linear. Awesome. Didn't have any hunger here. And then this is this mass phase. And what's going to happen, you already see these trending downward. We're going to have this spike downward and then come back up. Hopefully we'll end up somewhere around here with my body weight at the end of this mass phase. Somewhere around, it looks like 260 sounds reasonable. And this is what this looks like on the original plan that Jared sent to me. So over a year of massing and then maintaining to hold on to and resensitize my muscles to continue to drive progress here in the cut. We just finished this mass phase and we are now on to this Minicut. And then here we're actually going to do 2 5-to-1 paradigms, meaning 5 weeks of accumulation and then 1 week deload. And then we're going to maintain. And then this cut is going to be the start of our 34-week cut for the show. So that's what everything's been looking like. That's basically what this year has looked like. You can go back on my Instagram and look at photos from a year ago plus. The results I've been able to achieve have been outstanding, at least by my standards. Here's what I'm currently looking like. And I'm showing this also because this is going to be how part of the reason in which I make decisions. At the end of the day, I had Jared actually just kind of tell me how I should approach the mini cut. And for those who don't know, I do have a video explaining how I did my last mini cut about a year ago. It's kind of when I stopped posting as much on YouTube as far as like vlog style stuff. And I explain basically the reasoning for doing mini cuts and whatnot. Essentially, this is an opportunity to resensitize the volume and without doing a full maintenance period, because you do build up some resistance to certain training modalities, and you have to slowly increase your volume over time to be able to get the same amount of stimulus to a point where it becomes unproductive. And that's when we take the mini cut. And at the same time, body fat does accumulate over a mass gaining period, in which it is nice to get some of that body fat off to buy you some room. Generally the top end of body fat that's recommended that I would not be comfortable going above is about 20%, as you do get some health trade-off there, and some other things. Visually, it's not appealing. You can have other problems like loose skin, whatnot. So essentially, we're going to shed off some fat. We're going to resensitize to training. It's going to buy us more time massing. And eventually, we will have to do a maintenance period. Excuse me. So this is how I'm currently looking. Oh, that's a training video. These were photos actually from like a week ago. I'm pretty happy. This shot isn't my favorite at the moment, but it does look much better, especially as I get leaner and in different lighting generally. This is how I'm looking pretty good right now. This is actually not my peak physique. I actually had this problem. I was comparing one of my not peak physiques. And what I mean by peak is peak amount of food, peak amount of anabolic use. Peak meaning like the last time I compared these photos, the best I looked, I was like, I took some photos from peak last off season, meaning the end of the off season, my food was the highest, anabolics were at the highest, all that stuff. And I was looking at some photos from like midway through, and I got a little discouraged. And then I actually ran it by my coach, and in the back of my mind, I knew that this was the case, but I kind of like asked him, hey, am I doing something wrong here? And it's a lot of variables, right? The fullness aspect comes from anabolics, and having your anabolics at a certain amount creates a certain amount of fullness. Same with GH and other things, and then also the amount of carbohydrates you have. And I think also last time when I had done a mini cut, I looked a lot better towards the end, right? This is essentially, I need to shed some of this fat off. So, but in reality, if I were to, I don't have those photos right now, but I were to pull those photos up next to each other from peak last off season, I am just about there. And you can see, and Jared pointed this out to me as well, little subtle areas where the development is there. I just don't have that fullness. So sometimes it's kind of like shooting in the dark. And a lot of what we talked about is like, you kind of have to trust the process, right? He said on his end, like, look at your spreadsheets, look at how much strength you've gained. And then on my end, I've been in a consistent surplus. I've been using enough anabolics to where I think I would get a response from, slowly titrating up the dosage. So that is, you have to be patient and you have to trust the process. I mean, no doubt, if I'm in a surplus, a definite surplus, I'm gaining weight week to week, I'm using a decent bit of anabolics and other ancillaries that I know I get a response from, and I'm getting stronger, like my performance is getting better, then it is very likely that I'm putting on muscle tissue. And if I wasn't, there'd be something really off. So maybe, and if my health is in check, a lot of other variables that I've been monitoring, would lead me to believe that I am putting on muscle tissue behind the scenes without this extra fullness. It's really tough sometimes. You can't be on peak dosages year round, though, is the reality, if you want to actually do this long term and be healthy. So that is the path that I've chosen to take, and it just required me to be extremely patient. I don't look like a pro bodybuilder in the gym, and I'm not a pro yet. That's the aspiration, but you have to be really patient. You could slam a ton of gear and look full out of your mind all the time, veins ripped, whatever, but what does that do to your health long term, right? What does that do to your ability to get the most out of the least and be able to do this long term? It definitely puts a huge dent in that and will definitely shorten the span of time that you can be productive. So I've chosen to take this approach. Maybe I'll touch on that a little bit more, but currently, regardless, we're going to be, shedding off the weight. Essentially, what Jared believes that we should do is a 5% loss over a 3-week span. Now, if you read the Minicut manual, I'll put, maybe I won't. There are different, let me pull up my notes here. There are different spans of time and rates of loss. Like right here, they recommend the less time you do a Minicut, the more aggressive you can be. And that's why I believe Jared went with a 5% rate of loss for myself. And that also probably has to do with the fact that there are anabolics at play. If you're a natural athlete, you may want to go a little more conservative. And I think that's where some of these recommendations in their book was. Book's like $13. I would definitely buy it. It's really, really useful. This is going to be my second time ever utilizing one, but it was really productive after the first one. Essentially, basically, the longer you do a Minicut, the less aggressive you want to be, from what I understand. Let me just double check here. Don't want to be giving you guys incorrect information. That's one of the things I try to uphold myself to. Where is the length of time? Timeline. Somewhere in here. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah. Longer. For 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, and here, I mean, it even recommends that you shouldn't go beyond a 1 to 2% loss in 2 to 3 weeks. I think we can get away with it just fine. I believe I did something around that my last Minicut and was fine. It was kind of a rough diet, and if you're not super experienced with Minicuts, then I do not recommend doing a super aggressive diet. It reminded me of when I've crash dieted in the past, and it's something that's really tough psychologically to get through sometimes. And the point of this period is to drop fatigue. So if this is adding fatigue, then you don't want to do it. At least in that manner. You may want to be less aggressive. Obviously, you want to be somewhat aggressive because you have a short period of time. You want to get in and get out. Anyway, what I did, as I didn't use the formulas in the book, I do recommend using the formulas in the book and going with the rates of loss in the book, especially if you're a natural athlete. But essentially what I did, let me pull up a calculator here. So, Jared says 5% rate of loss per week, right? So what do I do? I go in here into my calculator, right? 5% rate of loss, right? Okay, so what's my body weight? It's around 250 without all the body water, roughly. Okay, and times that by 5%. We have 12.5 pounds, right? I got 3 weeks to do this Minicut. So, divide that by 3. Now I have 4.16. Okay? So, I have to lose 4.16 pounds per week in each week for 3 weeks, right? Okay, so there are 3,500 calories in 1 pound of fat. So what I do is I take this number and multiply it by 3,500 to get my weekly deficit that I need. Okay, 14,000 calories per week. It's crazy when you think about it. Now to get my daily deficit, I'm going to divide that by 7. Boom, 2,083. I'm just going to round that up. Excuse me, I just ate 2,100 calories is going to be my daily deficit for this Minicut, right? Now going into my data collection over here, my deload, oh, this is really small. My deload, I was eating, oh, I said that like that, my apologies, about 4,800 calories. And if you look at my weight average over here, given there may have been some body water drop off, I lost about 1 pound last week right here. So in reality, that's probably where my maintenance is at, pretty close. And if it's less, then I'm just going to lose more weight during the Minicut. So, okay, how do I find out my macros for this now, right? Well, first I'm going to take let's say 4,800, and we're going to subtract that from our daily deficit, right? Because we need to be at maintenance. We don't want to subtract that from our surplus number, right? Okay, so my maintenance calories minus the deficit that I calculated to be at a 5% rate of loss over this whole mini cut, my total body weight. 2,700 calories, right? Okay, so where I start when I'm building out a plan is protein. We want my protein to be at a gram per pound, probably a little bit more, just because of how aggressive the deficit is. And there is some argument that enhanced athletes can get away with a little bit more protein as well. So I think 270 is a good number there, right? So, I know 2,700 is my daily calories, right? So let's see, 270 and multiply that by, or here, let's do this. 2,700 calories. Oh, geez. This is how we're going to find out our fat and carbohydrate calories. This is basically how we find out all our macros. 2,700, and we're going to subtract the amount of calories. Oh, shoot. Sorry. 2,700. We're going to subtract the amount of calories of protein, which is 270 times 4. Each gram of protein has 4 calories. Okay, we have 1,600 calories. Now, we're going to keep my fat at the lowest amount that we can without causing extra fatigue, right? Which would be about 0.3 grams per pound. So we're going to subtract 250 times 0.3. This is how many calories we have left up per carbohydrate. And we're going to divide this by 4 to get the amount of carbs we can eat. 386. Now, I've already built out a plan here. Probably going to need that calculator again. I don't know why I did that. That's definitely not correct. Okay, I didn't do that math right. Oh. Yeah, anyway. Here, that's a better way to do it. Let's not reverse engineer it, make it complicated. I definitely screwed up that math. I don't know how, but okay. So anyway, the way I would build out a program is, I don't even know if I do it like that exactly. I have 270 grams of protein. I'll just divide that by how many meals I'm going to eat in a day. Way easier. So we're going to try to hit around 54. And I usually go a little more conservative. As you can see here, it's like 50 grams per meal because sometimes there's some added rice. And I actually added in a meal of just yogurt that just I pulled some protein from each meal so I can have this meal as kind of like a snack or a dessert like I like to do when I'm dieting. So yeah, then I'll just try to find the amount of protein ounces that equals 50 grams of protein roughly, right? So I found for the leaner red meats that I'm eating, it's usually not only like 6 ounces, 5 ounces for 30, 40, including the rice in the meal, you have about 4 grams. I believe these studies that talk about having a certain amount of protein per meal, they assume that, I can't remember the percentage, but it's not all of they assume that like 70% or something, man, do not quote me on that number, but they assume that like 70% is coming from a high quality complete protein source. So generally the data we have saying that, hey, you need to have X amount of protein in a certain feeding to hit like the leucine threshold is assuming that most of that is coming from high quality protein and some of that is not. So you don't have to be 40 grams from complete protein. Some of it can come from rice and other things like that, right? Most of it you want to. And that's talking about your whole diet composition as well. So if you have 300 grams of protein and, or better yet, like if you have, let's make it easier, if you have 100 grams of protein, 70 grams of those protein are coming from beef, then you're in a good spot. Or not beef, sorry, just any complete protein source, meat, general dairy, eggs, stuff like that. So anyway, yes, including some of this protein from my rice, I'm hitting around, looks like 42 grams, 45, which I'm pretty comfortable with per meal, 50 on the first one. It varies a little bit, but not a big deal. At the end of the day, your total calories are more important. Essentially, I added this meal just so I have the dessert, and if I'm starting to get sleep disturbances, I actually put this in the middle of the night. Excuse me. And essentially, I try to put a little bit more of carbohydrate around the workout, which, as you can see, it's a good chunk of the diet. I don't know how much it is per, I don't know, 1/3, that would be 1/3 of the carbohydrates right around the workout, post-workout. And then I put some here. This is not 1 Bibigo cup, though. It's like 150 grams of a Bibigo cup. Okay. something light before the training session. I could even go down to less than this. I really don't like eating before training. Really don't like having stuff in my stomach. Don't like being gassy and whatnot. Put some cereal in here. Likely this is going to change. Generally, if I'm coming out of a mass phase, I'm super hungry or super not hungry. Sorry, I'm not interested in food. So, still having some of those highly palatable, super calorie dense foods in there is going to help, get me to a place where I want to eat again. I may have to rotate this out, but I generally will start with that. Like still have some of those super palatable foods in there just at the beginning. I'll probably just rotate that out for like rice and pineapple with some beef or something. So yeah, that's what I have currently, and otherwise just some eggs. Basically, build this around my micronutrient requirements. Those are the foods that go in the diet first. So like the almonds go in there, and the yogurt goes in there first, and the fruit goes in there, and the veggies, and protein from eggs, protein from beef, and then I pick carbohydrate sources based on how full or not full I am. So likely I'll probably end up putting oatmeal here at this first meal, and this is going to be mostly potato for the carbohydrates here, and then maybe some rice post-workout. Timing doesn't matter a whole lot in a deficit. Again, total calories probably make the most difference. So that's essentially how I set up my Minicut. I can show you some other data markers that I collected. I don't think it really makes a whole lot of difference because we not know what I'm doing. These are definitely things you want to pay attention to, though, so I'll just throw them in this video. As you can tell, my blood pressure was going up. In reality, this is actually from, let me put a comment in here, likely from a leak in my CPAP that I just discovered the other day. I thought I was pretty fatigued last week, and I was thinking that it was from my training block, which it very well could be because fatigue accumulates over, multiple mesocycles. You do lots of training, without breaks for a really long time, you start to accumulate fatigue, and I felt really sick last week. I think in part of it, I was very fatigued, for sure. I was definitely really beat up from that training. Motivation was really low, really tired, really lethargic, almost a sick feeling. But I do also believe that my sleep was impacted, and that was also a factor because I switched out the mask that was broken last night for one I had, and I felt much better today, much more energized. I mean, it's 11 o'clock and I have not sat down once today. It's been a crazy ass day. But anyway, blood pressure is probably going to normalize here. These are just some of the data markers you can see that I'm collecting. When I do subsequent videos, you can kind of see what I'm looking out for. Obviously, you want to look at your heart rate, especially if you're enhanced, your fasting blood glucose. These do start to trend upward the longer I'm in a mass phase and the more body fat I accumulate. And to go back a little bit, I collect my waist. I'm kind of on the fence if I want to keep collecting caliper, as I'm just not super accurate with it. And it kind of can tell me where I'm trending, but it's just not like the best measure, and it just adds time. And I really just, in reality, with myself and my clients, I mostly just use photos and body weight. It's the most reliable we really have, and some of these things can get kind of wonky. But yeah, obviously, if your waist is going really high, trending upward, and then you can compare that with photos, and then maybe your caliper sites are trending upward, maybe we need to look at something. So it's nice to have multiple points to check, like, hey, what's going on? But I don't know if that's something I want to continually use. In the future, we'll have more hopefully more reliable data points. Anyway, I just track my hunger, energy level, sleep quality, sleep duration, actual amount that the phone says I sleep. I still don't know how I feel about this. I go to bed at 12 a.m. every night and wake up at 8 a.m. And I sleep. I feel like I sleep most of the time, but I guess my phone doesn't think I'm asleep that time, or maybe there is a discrepancy. I still need my lack. I have a little bit of lack of sleep knowledge at the time, so an area where I definitely want to learn more for sure. Anyway, just track life stress and something I did well or something I like to improve. I have this for my clients mostly, because I usually track this via a daily checklist and some other things like my whiteboard and stuff like that. But it's good to have here. Farm, I'll put in the write-up of this on my actual website. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can click the link below and we'll take you to my blog, and I'll discuss more in depth the adjustments I made in a more concise manner than me just talking this out. But that's really what's going on. I'm going to update next week and kind of talk about the progress and what you should do with a Minicut. because essentially the first 2 weeks are just masked, and I'm only doing this for 3 weeks. So masked in the sense that with body water, especially with farm involved, it's really tough to really know what's going on. So you just have to calculate your deficit like I did in this video and then just trust it. But I'll talk a little bit more about how I'm doing that, and talk more about the adjustments I'm making. And that's just going to be essentially what this series is like. So if you enjoyed this video and you found it useful, hit the like button, share it for sure. And, just stay tuned, because I will just continue to document this stuff as time goes on, and, document my success and my failures, and how I'm going about things. Hopefully that someone like myself, like 10 years ago, can catch this, and it can really provide some value in some form. So anyway, stay tuned. Hopefully I'll have one up in the next week or two. Check out the podcast as well. Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts. iTunes, Apple Podcasts, same thing. YouTube as well. Just should be in this channel. So anyway, talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching.